Hi everyone, so today I want to share with you some of the best books that I read in 2018. I read a lot of good books, so I didn't include all the ones I gave 4 and 5 stars to, just the ones that really stand out in my mind and I will probably reread one day, so like rereadable books for sure. This past year, the 2018, I set my reading goal on Goodreads for 50 books, and I accomplished that and actually went over it just a little bit, which I was extremely proud of, simply because so not last year, 2017, in November, late November, I had a baby. So I started 2018 with like a 1-month-old, and I really thought that my reading was just not gonna get accomplished at all, but it did. I still read pretty much the same amount of books, mainly because I read so much at night to the kids, and I picked some books that I like to read aloud, like some cool read alouds, that I would enjoy as well. So I definitely count those as part of my reading, although the ones that were my favorite from the past year are not ones that I read aloud to my kids. So I'm just going to get started with this stack. I don't know how many I have here. We'll just count them as we go. The first book I want to mention, though, is one that I don't have. It's the only one that I don't own, and that was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Excuse me. That was an excellent book. I read it just a few months ago, so it's more recent in my mind. It's one that I did not think that I would love so much, but I had to try it because I saw so many people recommending it and talking about it on YouTube and BookTube. And so it's one of those that I would have never picked up on my own had I not read and heard so many glowing reviews for it. Because it's this time, is it time travel? No, I guess you wouldn't really call it time travel. It's this sci-fi book about multiple universes that happen at the same time, like coincide. So really sci-fi book that I would never normally pick up because I just don't find myself reaching for sci-fi or really like crazy stuff. I would rather watch that stuff as a movie, actually. So I don't know if it is a movie. I don't think it is, but that would be an excellent movie, Dark Matter. So that book is just about a guy who gets caught up in the multiverse, and I don't want to give away too much of it, but basically the whole premise of it is there's multiple universes happening, like an infinite amount of universes, because every time you make a decision, it alters history. So there's multiple universes happening of all the different decisions you could have made throughout your life. Your multiverse self is living out that decision, and it totally alters the course of your life. And he's traveling through the multiverse to try to get back to the life that he knows, his one self knows. And then it all gets altered and by this other self, and I couldn't even begin to explain it because I will totally mess it up. It messed with my mind, which I loved in a good way. It really screwed with my mind in a good, juicy way. So I highly recommend it, even if you don't normally consider yourself the type of person that would read really sci-fi stuff like that, because I really enjoyed it, and I don't normally read that. What is this? What is that? Yep, didn't think that was supposed to be there. So yeah, highly recommend Dark Matter. I'm trying to get my husband to read it right now, and he thinks he won't like it, but he will, and he just needs to listen to me. So you need to listen to me as well. Alright, so let's get into the stack of physical books I have. Let's see, the next book is Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. This I read early last year, like February. This is a spooky, scary read. I had goosebumps popping up on my arms, I think within the first 2 chapters. I mean, I'm not kidding. This sucked me in really quickly, and I love when a book does that. I love when I can get into a book and become utterly like fascinated by it within like 1 chapter or 2. That's just amazing. But this is a really creepy book. It's sort of a ghost story, but definitely written for adults in a way that helps, I don't know, draw you in and get you totally immersed in like things that I guess you wouldn't normally believe in. It's always amazing to me how authors can do that and get you totally entrenched in a story that you didn't wouldn't believe normally could happen like in real life, but totally scare the pants off you and make you believe it's possible. So yeah, really creepy, spooky book. If you want something just scary to start your year off, or maybe something that you want to save for October of this year, this is a top book I would recommend to get your creepy on. So really enjoyed that. Let's see. The next one is The Girls Who Went Away by Ann Fessler, and it says the hidden history of women who surrendered children for adoption in the decades before Roe v. Wade. This was a heartbreaking book for me. I read it super fast, and really I think it stuck with me more because I do have a baby, so all those emotions and hormones and all that stuff's just flowing steadily right now, and that really it really alters my mind when I read stuff like this. But I still think, I mean, it would touch anyone. It's a nonfiction. I'm sure I mentioned that. Did I mention that? I don't know. This is a nonfiction book about women who were basically forced or coerced to give their children up for adoption whenever they got pregnant in a time, so like 60s, 70s, 50s, all in that time period when it was really unacceptable to become pregnant when you aren't married, and keeping the baby was just something that wasn't even comprehensible for people at that time, which is hard for me to comprehend, that anyone would rather, you know, that your family would rather you give up the baby and pretend it never existed. You know, because I say give up. I want to clarify something, because I know in the adoption world today, when people are placing babies for adoption, you say place babies because that's a conscious choice that you're making. It's well informed. But for these women, that wasn't the case. They were giving up their babies under duress. If anything, their babies were being stolen from them, which is heartbreaking. And I don't know. It's just something that blows my mind, because this was so acceptable for if you did find yourself in that situation. In our country, I mean, this isn't like some way off where you just disconnect and think that that could never happen. No, it definitely happened. And it makes me wonder, this book gets me a little passionate. This makes me wonder how many of the women in my life, maybe even family members, but definitely women from the older generation, are walking around today and carrying that precious secret in their heart, that they had a baby that they weren't allowed to talk about and they had to give away, and never know, you know, anything about, because open adoptions just were not a thing back then. So think about that. Think about the women in your life, and it really makes you wonder after reading a book like this how much you don't know about someone, because so many women go to the grave with a secret like that, because it was such a shameful thing to have a baby and not be married. But yeah, excellent book. Definitely a little emotional, so prepare yourself. But I would highly recommend it, if anything, to get a little bit of perspective. Moving on, the next one is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I think I finished this just back in December, so really recent read, big, thick book. I loved it. I actually watched the show first. It's a show. So that made me want to pick up the books, and yeah, still great. I love it. I don't know how much of my opinion is colored by the show, though, because now I can picture all the characters in my mind, and it's just... But anyways, yeah, this is a story about time travel, basically, about a woman who lives in post-World War II Europe, and she touches some sacred stones in Scotland and travels back in time to like the 1700s. And it's basically a love story, but, you know, a lot of action, intrigue, political stuff that I didn't know about, involving Scotland, because I mean, I don't know that much Scottish history, so it's really nice to have a big, juicy historical fiction book that has a lot of accurate history in it. So I'm learning a lot, but I'm also really enjoying the plot and the story. But this is definitely like just an unforgettable story. I love it so much, and I love the pictures that happen in my mind as I'm reading this, and just imagining like this romantic but harsh 1700s Scotland, and this woman traveling back in time, falling in love, and then having to deal with the life, thinking about the life she left behind in the future, and trying to figure out, what the best choice is, because she's creating a new life for herself in Scotland, way back like 200 years before she was technically born. Excellent book, though. I really love that. See, the next one was Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I read this one this past summer. So it's been a little while, but it's still, I picked this because it still sticks out in my mind. This is about a family of children, and again, like with the stolen children theme, it just stuck out in my mind this year. But they were born to a poorer family, but they were basically stolen. Their parents did not give them up or place them in an orphanage, but they were stolen by basically like a black market child selling ring that would steal children, usually poor children, ones that wouldn't make waves and stuff, steal them and put them in an orphanage and adopt them out for cash, basically. And this is a story of a family of children who go to one of the most famous places, which was, I think, was this in Memphis? Yeah, the Memphis, Tennessee Children's Home Society, which is based off a true story, or true stuff that happened. Children were taken and then basically sold or adopted out, and of course their history was lied about. So people would think they were adopting children that were not wanted, when actually they had families that loved them and did want them and never gave them up or placed them anywhere for adoption or in any sort of orphanage. But I don't know, there's a lot of I want to say like the undercurrent of that story for me was just evil, like just being amazed at the evil of the people that could be involved in something like that. This is a fiction story, but it's based on true events, which makes it that much more fascinating and horrible. Let's see, the next one is Nightfall by Jake Halpern and Peter Kujawinski. It says, after 14 years of day comes 14 years of night. Don't get left behind. This was a Build Your Library Family Reading Crate box. It was in the October box. And this one stuck out a lot in my mind just because it was so thrillery. It's a YA book, which I'm always surprised for some reason when I like them. And I like so many YA books, so I don't know why I'm surprised. But this is a YA like thriller type book, and I adored this. It's another one that sucked me in, and I finished it just in a matter of like maybe 2 days, just because I could not put it down. I had to find out what happened. But this is about people who live on what is basically an island, and they have 14 years of day, which are the good days. They're just living their life, and wow, I'm really bad at describing stuff sometimes. And then it goes through a cycle to where 14 years of night come, and that's when everybody needs to leave. They're preparing themselves for the dusk. They see when it's drawing to a close, their 14 years of day, and they need to leave. Nobody can get left behind, because if you get left behind, you're not going to survive. So this was really thrillery and fun, and I actually gave that to my 10-year-old to read, because there was nothing like, it was creepy, but there was nothing that I would consider super inappropriate for a 10-year-old to read in this. So I did give her this because she loves scary and thrillery type books, and she really enjoyed it as well. So I love that book. Definitely kind of sort of heebie-jeebie like vibe to it, but more like just like a thrill, like you don't know what's going to happen next. I really enjoyed that book though. Let's see, and the last book that I read that stands out in my mind this year was Homegoing by Jesse. I'm not sure. When I looked this up online, they pronounced it Jesse, but it's not exactly spelled like that. Anyways, first of all, can I just comment on this cover and how beautiful it is? I think it's one of the prettiest books that I own. I love this cover. It makes me feel hot. Reminds me of summer. So I would consider this like a summer read. But anyways, this was an excellent story. This was a story that starts in Africa, but diverges very quickly. It's about one family who, one side of the family, or one branch of descendants from a sister, comes to live in America through the slave trade, and then the other half, or the descendants of the other sister, stay in Africa. And it follows the storyline of those two diverging families, or the diverging family, one that's building a life in America and the other side that stays in Africa. And it moves rather quickly through a lot of different perspectives, but not hard to follow. Everybody had their own distinct voice and character, so it's one of those that you think are going to be confusing, because there was a lot of characters in here, because each new chapter was a different perspective and a different generation of character. So the generations, I mean, it covered, what, like 100 years or something in this book, or several hundred years in this book, in just this size of a book, through two different branches of the family. So it was a pretty amazing read. I really enjoyed it. Definitely hard to read some of the things that the different family members had to go through in building their lives. But I highly recommend it. I actually had my husband read it. He listened to it on audiobook, and he really enjoyed it as well. And it's not one he would probably normally pick up, because he's kind of the opposite of me and really enjoys historical fiction, but that is like more sci-fi and a lot of medieval things that sound really boring when I'm listening to him reading his audiobooks. But I would probably like them, just not ones I would pick, like The Mystery of the Silver Cup in England. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an example. Anyways, I need to stop talking because this video is getting long. I just really enjoyed talking about all these books, all these excellent books that I read in 2018, which doesn't even cover, you know, I read so many good ones, but these were the ones that just stick out the most in my mind and that I felt like I could talk about and try to convince people to read, basically. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. What were your favorite books that you read in the last year, and what are you looking forward to reading in 2019? Because I need to start, well, I don't need to start, I've already started, but I need to add more books to my want to read list and see if I can get even more reading done this year. I still have my goal set for 50 books, but it's always fun for me to see if I can go even beyond, because eventually I would like to set my Goodreads goal to something higher than 50 books. Maybe next year it'll be 60. I don't know. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you soon.